welcome. This is a Second Opinion Sports Medicine podcast. I'm Dr. Dhokal.
I'm Dr. Glass.
Dustin, what's happening, man? We're a week before the holidays. Busy week as always, but is it busier for you this week just because of, the hecticness of the holidays?
Yeah, for sure. Everybody's kind of running around crazy. The energy's a little different, both coming into the office and out there and on the streets, for sure. So it always adds a little excitement. Everybody's kind of, coming and going, getting ready for their vacations or staying home and family coming in. So it always makes it more fun.
What's your work schedule this week? Are you off a few days for the holidays? What are you doing?
No, just the days of Christmas and New Year's, but other than that, working straight through. So,
Yeah.
what about you?
Not much less.
No.
Busy week this week, regular week, and then taking a few days off between Christmas and New Year's. Trying to just plan for next year and recharge a little bit.
Good for you.
Yeah, man, it's looking forward to it. Plus, it's end of the football season, playoff time almost. Exciting time in NFL stuff. There was a few injuries this week. I know that you caught some highlights and you brought up a couple things to me earlier. What
did that throw you off?
I just saw you drop my
I couldn't pull that off.
I want you to know
it went way faster than I thought. Yeah. I was trying to match you on the screen.
That's hilarious.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. That made me laugh. I was saying, what highlight did you see that caught your eye where you're like, oh man, this week that's...
Yeah, unfortunately I didn't catch any games, but I was out on the fields and I was doing DraftKings. I made it to the playoffs in my little fantasy DraftKings thing. I was the 8th seed. So one plays 8. We were the last place. We got in basically on a bye because of our overall. We beat the other last place team and got in. But anyways, so we were watching that and actually beat the first place team. So that was a huge victory for me and my dad. We team up on picking our picks each week. So that was kind of fun. So I didn't watch any actual games. We were watching a bunch of little snippets and highlights. But I did catch a couple of the injuries that I kind of wanted to talk about and bring up and see if you saw any of them. Did you see Did you see any of them? One of the ones that
there's a half a dozen that I saw that I thought were at least, I don't want to say critical, but important in the sense of that's going to hurt the team for a minute,
Yeah.
But what were you going to bring up?
Yeah, well, the Ravens, Keaton Mitchell, that one, I don't know if you saw that. That was an ugly knee injury. I don't know if you got to watch that, but he was going around the right side and looked like the defender grabbed like a shoelace type tackle and kind of tripped him up. And the way he landed on that extended leg or the back leg, it was kind of interesting. I was trying to go back and forth. I actually took a picture of but it definitely bent the wrong way. And he's out with a full ACL injury. I don't know if you saw that, but it was one of the more gruesome ones I've seen.
I did see the highlight. I saw one clip. I didn't watch it repeatedly, but I didn't hear the news that he was out with that. It looked like one of those injuries where you think that there's multiple structural issues that you're going to have problems with, Was it only ACL or is it ACL, MCL?
Yeah.
Was there a fracture involved?
So the silver lining, like you said, it looked like it was going to be the terrible triad where it blows out everything kind of. But they said it was a clean ACL injury, which is good for recovery. He's out for the season, out for the beginning of next season, but it should recover a lot quicker, as we've talked about in the past, because we're only dealing with the ACL and not with meniscus and possible fractures and the like. So
yeah, injuries this time of year are tough, not only because it's the exciting part of the year, especially if you're in a playoff run, but you brought it up, I think, earlier in the season where, an injury earlier in the year, you might come back before the season's over. And so there's motivation there. Now you're on the opposite end of the spectrum where, you're definitely not going to be in for training camp. You're going to miss preseason, or at least be limited. And so that that's terrible. You know, as an athlete, you want to be a part of the growing process of the season and be a part of the team, develop that camaraderie, and also get your coach's eye and develop a rhythm. And to be able to only be healthy at mid-season, I think that's difficult. That's a challenge, you know.
Yeah, he was one of those guys too that you brought up earlier in the season. Not him particularly, but type of player that you like. He was an undrafted free agent. Didn't get a lot of looks. I think he was out the first few weeks of the season for an injury, maybe. Then got his shot and he had a big game. I think he went 138 yards and then scored a touchdown, maybe, and that got him kind of on the radar. Next game, he scored a touchdown, did more things, and so he got momentum. He got more and more reps, and then for this to happen, you just he put in his time, and he came from a mid major. I think it was Eastern something, not a big Power Five school, and kind of started making a name for himself. So yeah, so I feel bad that it happened.
Yeah, but I think in that offense to be a starting running back, somebody that you're relied upon, is tough with Lamar. And I think he really proved his worth and his value there. And I'm excited to see him come back next year. You know, I think it's going to be a long journey of rehab, but I think the good news is that it's only the ACL, like you said, and recovery will start right away. He'll probably have surgery in a couple days, and or maybe wait till the swelling goes down a little bit. Sometimes they pause for a while to develop strength in like the average person like you and I, but usually the high level athlete will get surgery ASAP and start rehab. Is that your experience as well, Dustin?
Yeah, yeah, well said. Yeah, it is.
I mean, in in the guys that you've seen that have had knee injuries, do they have you had anybody that's waited, a week or a month for some strengthening reasons or otherwise, or typically it's
Typically,
like
when they
right
wait
before the
is be yeah. Typically, when they wait is because upon the initial MRI, or they don't even get the MRI because it's so swollen, they can't. The surgeon can't see anything anyways, so they're going to want them to wait, get the inflammation down, and that could take up 4 or 6 weeks just to get the inflammation down. So that would be the main reason I see when there's a time delay in getting it done,
Mhm.
when it's that swollen. Also, I
Yeah.
see with the younger kids too, where they're going to want to make sure before they do surgery that it is indeed what they think they need to do. So they're going to make them wait a little longer, typically, to make sure. Because I've seen where a sophomore, junior in high school has a what it obviously looks like an ACL based on the laxity and based on the symptoms and the mechanism, and then the ortho says let's wait. Even with an MRI, they see something, let's wait. And then sure enough, it wasn't as bad as they thought once the swelling went down. So it saved them certain types of surgery, right? So sometimes it's worth it. It just depends on the ortho, how confident, how cocky, how experienced, they all have a little different experience.
A little different approach to it, right?
Yeah.
Which, you know, I was talking with somebody earlier today about a second opinion and the value of it. His actual statement was that there's a lot of variance in chiropractors, and he's been to a lot of bad ones. So this was my first interaction with this person, and so I was kind of breaking down um, how I treat people and was asking him what he didn't like about his previous experiences. But yeah, I forgot what the point was of me sharing that, but I think with getting back to the knee injury, uh, with Keaton Mitchell and his knee just being the ACL, I think as soon as they get that imaging done, they'll make some sort of prudent decision on what the next steps are. We can report back on that, but the timeline on that, you'd say a year out before he's playing, or do you think a little bit sooner? Like he might be running around in like week one or into preseason.
Yeah, and like we talked about before, it depends on how they're going to do it and what tissue they're going to use. Are they going to use cadaver? Are they going to use his own hamstring, quad, patellar tendon? What are they going to use to help graft that? I recently had a patient come in, and she had she was in her 50s, had an injury, had to have, I think it was a skiing injury, had to have the ACL repaired. It's coming up on a year with her recovery. She's doing remarkably well. She's going to be going skiing in the winter or coming up in a couple weeks. And she asked, she's all, do you mind just testing it? And I've been working with her through her rehab process. She's been getting PT. I've been doing the chiro side, but I've been seeing her knee since before she even had the surgery. I was in the same opinion. I told her, I want you to get 2 or 3 opinions before you decide what type of surgery. Make sure it resonates with you. But my point is, she went to, I think it was her third ortho, and this guy told her, hey, I have based on the way your tear is, you're a perfect candidate for this procedure that a lot of orthos don't even talk about or do. We can save a lot of this and do like a wraparound. I forget what she called it, but a wraparound type cinch job, full ACL tear and repair. But instead of having to use from another part or a cadaver, they were able to use the same tendon. And it was kind of my long story short, very successful in my opinion. Normally when I retest ACL, it's so rigid and restricted because they want to cinch it down almost even more than it was before, right? They want to make sure that nothing's going to happen that. So, but this one,
Sure.
when I compared side to side, it was almost equal. Like I told her, I said, man, this is really good. This is almost a natural end feel that we're getting. No, because they're either really sloppy still or super bound down, depending on, that's what
Right.
I've seen. And this one was, I said, man, hats off to that ortho. I know the ortho well. I've worked with him with contests and um, events, and he's just a great guy. But hadn't heard of this procedure, and I'm going to find out more from her to be able to recommend it, that people at least ask their surgeon if they're a candidate for. So,
You know what? That's a good point. Sometimes when I see that stiffness in joints, especially knees, I always attribute it to, or oftentimes attribute it to just the scar tissue or the inflammation or the lack of work that the patient is doing to keep that joint in its normal kind of mobility or range of motion, right? And you know, I kind of discounted the what you just brought up, which is, man, they could really cinch it down tight or leave it sometimes a little loose. Um, Earlier, when you were talking about inflammation on a joint, I don't know if I sent you this clip, but there was a clip of an athlete who blew his PCL this weekend, and there was a sports doc who was testing that. And before he even tested it, if you've seen a blown PCL, it's like, I mean, your
yeah.
knee sits back anyways. But when
Mm-hmm.
he pushed it, I mean, it looked like jello, And I haven't seen a PCL in like 3, maybe 5 years. That's been terrible. Um, and it kind of was like shocking. I was like, oh man, I got to send this to Dustin. So I don't know if I haven't, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, please
But
do.
it was pretty gruesome.
Yeah, man. And those are when you're testing them either on the field or when they come into the office and they haven't had an opinion yet, and you're the first one to test it and you see one. It's one of those things where you look at the patient, they look at you, and everybody knows something's wrong. It's like an
Right.
oh shit
Something
moment.
is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah.
man. Since we're on the knee topic, I want to bring up another athlete this weekend. Actually, interesting to me. I just want to get your thoughts on it. The Eagles cornerback had knee surgery this weekend, and they said that he's expected to return before the end of the year. I had a very Darius Slay, by the way. I had
There.
a very passionate Eagles fan. I paused because I was trying to figure out what the best way to describe this fan was. But he was saying, man, I thought he was out for the year, and they're saying that he's going to, be back by the end of the year. And like, how's that possible? And I said, well, totally dependent on the procedure. He's probably just getting it, cleaned out or scoped. And so I didn't get specifics on the type of surgery he was having, but what are your thoughts on that short-term return? And, do you think that he's going to be as effective, or do you think he's just going to be like satisfactory? Because some of those procedures leave your knee pretty tender for a while.
Yeah, for sure. So I did look into that, and they were saying that he'd be back in a week or two, or he planned on being back in a couple weeks. And, that leads, like you said, okay, it has to be a procedural type thing. So it has to be arthroscopic. And that's what I saw, that he was getting arthroscopic cleanup, is what I would have to assume. And so, that's one of those things where they're literally going in there with a scope, and the way that scope works is they're going to come in and basically pump it full of fluid around the joint and see what's left over. So they pump it up with fluid, suck out all any kind of material that's kind of getting caught up in that joint, and then whatever is left over or hanging or causing friction in
Right.
that area, they're going to go clean that up with with the scope, with a basically with a blade and with a suction cup, right, or a vacuum, and they're going to make it all smooth, that cartilage all smooth, the joint all smooth, and basically that's why they call it a cleanup job. They're just going in there, it's two to three little small holes, go in, go out, and it's a pretty simple procedure. And basically, because they're not repairing anything, they're removing things. It's opening up more room for the joint, making it feel better, less pressure, right? So essentially,
Yeah.
the main healing part of that, and why it's such a smaller timeline, is because all we have to do now is just let the inflammation drop, get the pressure from that excess fluid that they pumped in there, and by irritating the surface, let that inflammation get down, and then let the wounds heal. So that's the biggest part of the repair and return, which is a lot faster than sutures, hardware in there, and things of that nature. So why would they wait, or why wouldn't they do it sooner? I would assume that they were probably putting it off for a few weeks, trying to figure out timing of what games they have coming up. Bye weeks play into that, there are all kinds of things. And so giving him, or basically who else is backing him up too, who's available to go in if he took time off, right? So there's a lot of strategy going in on that. So yeah.
Yeah, his backups are a rookie by the name of Kali Ringo and a second-year player, Josh Joby. So not exactly veteran backup guys, but it's the next man up situation.
And have they been healthy?
One
Are
last
they
thing on that,
healthy?
all
What?
those are factors, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think healthier than Darius Slay is at this point. Obviously, if he had the procedure. The main thing I was trying to clarify was, so for that type of a procedure, it's more like a cleanup, a debris removal, any sort of junk, as if you may call it, or loose bodies, or like you described it, any fraying, that's all smoothed out. So you're making sure that that joint is as smooth as possible, right?
yes, correct. I kind of like, it's an irritant, right? If you have a nice clean joint, everything's moving properly. Or let's just think of our a shoe and a sock, right? If you put a little pebble in there, right, that's an irritant, right? So and every time you walk, you're
Right.
gonna feel it. It's gonna slide around. Might get a little blister in there. Might get some inflammation. Might get some scraping. Pretty soon, it's going to be intolerable. You're not going to want it, so you're going to go in there and take that out. It's going to feel so much better, right? So that's how I kind of think of when they go in and they want to clean something up. And if you ever see me, I mean, our listeners can go online, social media is showing them all the time. It's pretty cool to see them go in on that joint and clean it up. It's not bloody. It's not gross. It's usually black and white. I mean, it's usually in color, but the bone is, bone white or off white, and the fluid. It's pretty cool to see how they go in there with little tweezer looking things and a little vacuum and suck it up. So you can
That's cool.
imagine
You have to
how.
check it out on YouTube.
Yeah,
um,
I've had a
on the
couple,
recovery side,
and I know real quick. I've had a couple, and they usually, back in the day, they would send us home with a VHS of your knee repair, and so you can check it out. Now I'm sure it's on a thumb drive, or even it's probably digital. They send it right to your portal now, but it's kind of cool. It's kind of,
they
they
better,
cover their own ass by recording them all, and make sure that if anything goes wrong, they have proof of what's going on and what's going. So
Yeah, no, it's pretty awesome that you can have a camera in a space that small, and a lot of those procedures are done, with cameras anyways, obviously, and so it's cool to have that. I think it's interesting to watch those videos. Um, on the recovery tip, I had somebody once ask me, and that reminded me when you were speaking of it, is his comment was, "Man, it's too bad I don't have all the things that the pro athletes have to recover because I'd be back on the tennis court really soon." And it made me think about all the things that I'll say the regular person like you and I have access to, and it's a lot of the same things. Hyperbaric chamber, PEMF is great for post-surgical inflammation reduction. You can go get acupuncture. You can use a um, cold compression of any brand. There's several brands that do that now. It used to be Game Ready was like one of the main ones. So those are all things that you can go see somebody like us that can do soft tissue work and do other things to kind of flush out the inflammation and make sure the joint is functioning as quickly as possible in the best manner as possible. So I was saying there's almost all the same things nowadays, whereas before a lot of those things I just mentioned were only limited to people that had the access, right? Is there anything that I
Right.
missed?
No, I love it. One thing I would say that when you said that, you're absolutely right. It's so accessible. Acupuncture is a great one because the whole idea is to open up the circulation, allow things to drain, get muscle tension down. But I also kinesio tape, rock tape, KT
Right.
tape, all those are great for somebody at home to put on because it's that cueing effect. It will help drop inflammation, but it will also give that neurological feedback that everything's in the right place. So that's a great tool at home. Compression sleeves, the Tommy Coppers, the copper fits, or not. You don't even
Mm-hmm.
have to have copper in them, but any kind of compression sleeve works great. Yeah, the fireflies. We've talked about the fireflies. Those would work great because
Firefly.
those were designed for post surgical knee surgeries back in Europe, and they brought them over here for active lifestyle. But post surgery, they're great for preventing, clots and swelling. So all
Dude,
accessible.
we need to book uh, the people at Firefly. I would love to have a conversation with them. I've had such good results with that product, and every time I order more, I end up giving them out to patients that week,
Yeah.
or they end up purchasing them. And
Yeah.
man, I mean, it's been effective with like 90% of the people I give them to.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's ironic you said that. We recently just reconnected a couple weeks ago, so you know, I'm sure he'd have no problem coming on. Um, so
Yeah,
we'll make
we're
that happen.
booked into booked into January, but let's get them on the calendar for January. One of
Okay.
these sessions. I would love to have that conversation. That would be great.
Yeah,
Um,
sounds good.
we've been
Put
talking
it in
about
the
knees.
notes.
We've been talking about Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you. Um, we've been talking about knees for a while. You brought
I have
up
a
Keaton
real quick. I
Mitchell
have a
earlier.
trivia question for you.
I love it. Let's hear it.
What, and this might lead into the next thing we want to talk about.
I would say broken nose
You are right.
or a chip tooth. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So broken nose. So yeah, I was thinking broken nose orbit because we've seen that playing football, right? With
Yeah.
our flag football experience, we've seen the broken
Yep.
orbits. But chip tooth, well, yeah, that's a procedure that they come in for a lot, or a tooth knocked out in emergency procedures.
Yeah.
We've had to deal with those, how to deal with those properly, right? So, but yeah, broken
Yeah.
nose, which leads us into something we saw this week, right?
Dude, I and he played through the game. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
busted?
What's that?
Have you had that happen?
Oh, it's brutal. So yeah, um, and I never got it fixed, but in junior high, I got it popped pretty good and off to the side and bump and blood just gushing out. Um, but yeah, they're painful, man. Like you said, it's one of the worst. You get nicked, your eyes start watering, everything starts going.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So I don't know how this guy played through it. Who was it? It was Andrew something.
Yeah, Andrew Van Ginkel.
Yeah. Beast mode. True warrior. I think I read one of the articles said this is a definition of a true warrior.
Well, I can't understand that. I break my nose in a game, I'm probably done for the day. And you know what? As a QB, like maybe I'm like, okay, I can still throw the ball, so perhaps, but I'm definitely not tackling people with a busted nose as a
Yeah.
linebacker. I'm not having a running back charge at me and take that on. So he's definitely different.
Yeah, so let's talk about broken noses. That's not something we'll have come. I've had them come through my office before because people want us to reset them, right? I mean, I don't know if you've had those come through, but I've had them come through and they've asked me to reset them. I've had people call from an event. Hey, I think I busted my nose. It's laying to the side. Can I come in and reset it?
Yeah.
So
Oh man.
it's one of those things where I always refer them out. It's something we can do, but people forget it. They see it in the movies. A guy goes in and then they go and they push it back. These are facial bones. This is part of your skull, right? It's an actual bone that's broken. It's typically at the bridge,
Yeah.
and then you got cartilage damage. So it's not something that the cartilage is not going back. The bones, when they reset them, when you see them in the movies do that, it's not. You're not like putting a bone like a dislocation. It's a fracture that. So
Dude.
the proper thing to do is go get medical attention. What they're going to do is take a little, what do you call those? Oh my God, it's
Gauze.
basically
Gauze.
stepulums, I think, or is that the right word? But
Q-tip.
anyways, like little like things like whatever. I'm butchering it, but where they spread it out, kind of like Total Recall. Remember when he pulls that thing out of his nose? They're gonna put it in. What?
Calipers.
Yeah, something like that. They're going to spread that out. Yeah, they're basically going to spread that out and then pack it once they get the bones in line. So after the x-ray, they're you want them to heal over the next 6 to 8 weeks. It's not just to put it back in and then go. And you usually, you want to do that not only for looks, but for being able to breathe properly. You've heard of deviated septums.
Right.
You lose blood flow or airflow, oxygen. That's going to affect your recovery, your stamina, your performance. So, and so it's not something to take lightly. So, to our listeners, if you have it happen on the basketball court or something, get to the ER, get to the urgent care. They'll know what to do. They'll pack it. They'll do it properly. It's not something you have your cousin Vinny put back in place. So
I would love for a patient to try to come into the office and be like, "Hey, can you reset this?" I'd be like, "Are you out of your mind? Go to the ER right now." Like,
right,
I am not doing that
right,
unless you and I were like hiking
yeah,
Half Dome in the woods and like
yeah,
tripped and fell. Like, okay, like we're
yeah.
stuck. But
Out of
no,
necessity.
sir.
Mm-mm.
Mm,
No, too much
no,
can go
no way.
wrong.
I was cringing when
Yeah.
you were talking about it.
Yeah. So
That's
one
too
of the
much.
things that people do from emergency procedures, you'll remember this, but if one of the big red flags, and I want our listeners to hear this if it ever happens, besides blood coming out, if you have clear liquid that's not snot coming out, because sometimes you'll start getting snot too. You'll start, once the blood goes, you'll have snot because things aren't flowing well. But if blood's
Yeah.
coming out, you got to stop the bleeding first. So when it does not stop bleeding, that's usually a medical emergency that something more is going on. And then also, if you see clear liquid coming out, that's not snot. that could be a medical emergency too, where there's more fractures up in the skull than obvious. So I just wanted to kind of
It's
make
very
point of
situational.
those 2 points.
That's definitely don't play around. But it obviously wasn't too much of a concern for the medical staff. They probably, I assumed, stopped the bleeding, stuffed the nose with gauze, maybe put a brace over the top of it, taped it
Yeah,
to his face. Probably wasn't pretty. I didn't
yeah,
see it, but I'm assuming. And you have your face mask, you have your helmet, so theoretically you're not hitting your nose. Although I would counter having a broken nose and having repeated collisions is shaking your skull and
yeah. Well,
displacing those fractures. It probably doesn't feel good, but that's a testament to Andrew, I guess, and his,
yeah,
I'll call it tenacity for
yeah.
playing through that.
Yeah, I think the number one thing they were checking was, okay, we got the bleeding stopped, and can you breathe? If you can breathe, okay,
Right, right.
can you breathe without any issue? Yes. Okay, now it's up to you if you want to deal with the pain, and depending on how displaced it was or not. But you're probably right. I mean, there's ways that if it's not totally fractured, and the medical staff, most of those teams obviously have orthopedics on site that can do that properly too. So they could have gone in there with big old Q-tip looking things and reset those bones, and then, like you said, put a
Sure.
brace on it and made it secure until they. And typically, you have a couple weeks to let it calm down and heal, without it being a total emergency. So once you know you can breathe, the first thing to do is, after the bleeding has gone down, is the next thing you want to do is get the swelling down, and that might take a few days to a couple weeks, and then you can seek professional help. So they do have a good time frame. He could get through the game, but one thing that people don't think about is, after about 2-3 weeks of letting it go, if it becomes it starts healing at that point, then it becomes where
Mhm.
they might have to surgically go in there and re-break it to reset it. And then, so typically you want to take
Well,
care of that in the first couple of weeks.
bro, first couple of weeks, I don't have percentages to spare on this face. You know what I mean? Like, you're a
Yeah.
good looking dude. You could wait a couple of weeks maybe and be like, my nose is messed up. It doesn't mess me up at all, but I'm going in right away. I'm not messing around on that.
uh,
Breathing, like bleeding, like I'm getting that taken care of.
oh yeah.
Although I will say, when I tore my ACL, I thought it was a sprain. I didn't get an MRI for 3 weeks. And then the guy was like, bro, you have a completely torn ACL, a partially torn MCL. You have a fracture on your fibula, and your meniscus is torn. Like, what are you doing right now?
Oh man.
And
Yeah.
I was like, I got a brace on. Um, so yeah, maybe I'm not the best assessor, but you brought up pain. I wanted to bring up somebody now. Typically on defense, if you say who's the hardest hitter, maybe some people would say probably the safety. That's typically, at least it used to be known. And around the league, I would say Troy Polamalu of the Steelers was probably one of the hardest hitting safeties back when hitting was a little bit different than it is these days recently. However, the Steelers have another safety, Damon Kazi, I believe is how you pronounce his name, and he crushed Michael Pittman Jr. He got ejected, which didn't surprise me, but he was ejected for the rest of the year. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because there's several things, right? You could be like, well, that was a nasty hit. He's a dirty player. You could say, well, he's on defense. He's trying to dislodge the ball. But I was more on like bro, you're suspended for the year. That's such a bang bang thing. That sounded aggressive, is putting it kindly. I thought it was kind of messed up to kick him out for the year off a one play. Now, I don't know if he has a huge history, but what do you know about it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the first thing I saw was yesterday, uh, scrolling through social media trying to find some stuff for the podcast, and what I saw was his interview. I didn't see the hit or didn't see anything. I just saw him talking about it and his
Uh-huh.
frustration with it. And what he had brought up was something that we had brought up last season, um, last year on our podcast, regarding where is NFL going with this? I think it was particularly when we were talking, I think the Tua hit, and we were talking about, all these safety precautions they're trying to do to keep these players safe and healthy,
Right.
is actually making the game a little more dangerous to some people. There, that's one thought process, is that you put so many restrictions, yet you're asking them to go full speed, full speed, full effort on every play, and expect them to pull off or pull back. So his point was, he's all, I signed up for this game to hit people hard, and I'm misquoting him, but the basic gist was, I'm here, I'm going full speed. You've asked me to play this game. I've signed up for this game, but you're asking me to play basically flag football rules. He's all, if you want us to play flag football, then let's put on flags and I'll play flag football. But if you're asking me to play football, contact sport, then I'm going to play contact sport and hit people as hard as I can to make things happen, right? And so he was frustrated with the rules of the game, and the the double standards of what the expectations are, but what the rules are by the higher uppers. So it was
For
pretty
sure.
interesting, because I heard the flag football thing, and that's what we talked about. That, hey, that might be the way it goes, if they really want to get around. Or the flip side is they just make it gridiron football again. So I felt his pain, and then this morning I got up and I wanted to see the
Yeah.
hit. Go ahead, and yeah, what do you think about what he's saying and everything?
No, I mean, I can see both sides. Look, I think the game has changed. I really believe that you have to adapt. I've had a hard time adapting to things in my life and recently as well. Like, I get it, right? And like, this is his career, it's his livelihood as a defensive player. You could name five different rule changes in the last 5 years that have benefited the offense and not the defense. And you could make an argument that that makes, yes, it does protect the offensive player, but it also maybe exposes the defensive player now to being susceptible to injury because
Right.
you're limiting what he can do on the field and how he instinctively reacts.
Yeah.
I just thought I can't remember the last time somebody was suspended for a full year for
So
one play.
yeah, so I looked into that. So this morning I looked at, I wanted to see the hit. Personally, I'm a contact guy. I didn't. Pittman laid out for the ball. Did you see it? So basically,
I did, yeah. Yeah.
he laid out for the ball, full extension, and Kaze, I don't know how you say his last name, so I apologize. Came down, and he's trying to disrupt the play, right? So he dives into him or leaves his feet to make a tackle as well, and he drops his head, drops his shoulder. But the way, of course, in hindsight, you slow it down, you look at it down, it looks like he's leading in with his head. But in a split millisecond, he's breaking down on a play that's happening in real time. He's
Yeah.
basically diving at the player to try to knock out the ball. He's not going for a tackle at that point. He's trying to
Right.
dislodge that. If Pittman catches it, he wants to make sure he can have an opportunity to, one, knock out the ball and stop him, right? So that's what he's
Right.
attempting to do, and that's what he did. He didn't catch it. He blew him up.
Let me
So
put it this way. Would you say that was dirty or not?
I would say it's not dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think so either. That's why I thought that the suspension for the year was aggressive. Now, if it's outside the bounds, whether it's dirty or not, it ended up being an aggressive play. He was hurt, and you want to pull him for the game or suspend him for a game. I said I can't remember the last time somebody was suspended for a play. It did make me think of Miles Garrett, but that wasn't an on the field play. That was like, I'm taking your helmet and swinging your helmet at a quarterback's head. That
Right.
was beyond the whistle. This was during the course of the game,
Yeah.
you know, instinctively during the play. And so I don't think it was dirty. I don't know what his history is. If he's
Well,
repeatedly, hunting for
here,
heads, that's something else.
yeah, this is what I saw that the NFL, I think it was the commission, not the commissioner, but somebody in charge of the rules and regulations of the safety health. This is
Mhm.
what they said. He was ejected from the game and will not return for the rest of the season, suspended, like you said, and for repeated violations of playing rules intended to protect the health and safety of players. So they mentioned repeated violations. So I couldn't find anywhere else this season that he had repeat violations. But even in the press conference right after, they said he had repeat violations that made it sound like in that game for dirty play
Yeah.
type stuff. So there must be a history with this guy where they're saying, "Hey, you've had 3 strikes, you're out. This is the third time you've been suspended for, or um, ejected out of a game. We can't. You're obviously not learning your lesson. You're out," type thing. I don't know, but that's the only thing I can think of. Like you said, I haven't seen a suspension. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's suspension without pay. I don't know if you
Right.
saw
Yeah,
that.
that was the
Yeah,
no, that was the I didn't see that, but I knew that innately, and I'm glad that you brought that up because, obviously, I was going to say obviously he didn't do it on purpose, No one's trying to lose their paycheck, right?
no,
So he's playing, he's walking that line of I'm going to be aggressive and I need to, make the play of dislodging the ball. And now it was deemed dangerous, like, look, if Michael Pittman catches that ball and gets up from that play right away, maybe that's not a flag.
his job is to disrupt the play. And you played football. When I was playing, if you got a guy coming across the middle, you want to hit him hard enough to where he thinks twice about coming across and laying out for a ball again, right? That's the mindset of a
100%.
defender. You make him pay
Yeah.
so the next time he comes across, he has those little alligator arms to where he pulls back, right? So
Right. A million
it's
percent. No, you're right.
it's tough.
Well, we have the perfect person to ask. We have a guest coming on in the next few weeks who is an NFL safety. And so let's remember to ask him about this and
For
see
sure.
what his thoughts are on it because I know he'll have something to say. And I'm curious to find out how many times he got fined. There's some follow up questions to that we can ask him.
Yeah, let's make sure of that because he played in a little different generation, so it'll be interesting to come
Yeah.
to see what his thoughts are on this new play. If he would be able to, how would he be able to adapt if he had to? Obviously for a
Yeah.
paycheck, you do what you have to do, but it's tough. So I'm real interested in getting his opinion.
100%. We'll have to remember to do that for sure. Um, there's one or two things I wanted to bring up before we get off, and then obviously ask, if there's anything that is on your mind as well. I saw Aaron Rodgers this week got cleared to return to the team, return to practice, perhaps is the official designation. Whether he practices or not, I think was dependent on what their record is. Just in general, though, I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen in any sport somebody return from an Achilles rupture, not just a tear. And it's just a testament to like how far sports medicine has come. It's like really amazing. And I don't really have anything else to add, but I wanted to get your thoughts on that. I'm just like, people are haters on Aaron Rodgers, but like what he did with his Achilles just to be at the point that he is right now, those who know, like that's,
Yeah.
if I had a hat,
So
I'd take it off.
Oh, for sure. So what we know, right? That was in September. He had 11 weeks ago he had the surgery. So 11 weeks,
Right.
bro. So 11 weeks ago he had surgery. So and at 11 weeks ago he said he put it out there in the football universe that if we make postseason, I want to be ready for the postseason, right? So
Right.
the last 11 weeks he's had that mindset. Well, up until this week or last week, I forget when it was determined they're not going to make the postseason. So now, but that doesn't change what he's done these last 11 weeks in preparation to play the postseason, right? But to put it in,
100%. Yeah.
yeah. That's a testament, and me and you know this, and we live it. Is how much mindset plays into the healing properties, right? He set it in
Yeah.
motion early. I'm gonna do whatever I can to be prepared. If this happens, I want to make sure I'm giving myself the best chance possible to do it. So I can't look back and go, "Oh, I wish I would have done this differently." Now that I have the opportunity, so but I wanted to put that in perspective. So yeah, he was clear to suit up for practice or be at practice. he has not been cleared to play. He meets with the doctors tomorrow, and the medical staff and his ortho tomorrow on Tuesday to determine. They need to make a decision by Wednesday if they will clear him for the remaining season. Now, the coach has come out. Yeah, the coach has come out and said, I don't care what Rodgers wants. There's no way, I will do it without the clearance of everybody. Because we got, now that there's no need for the postseason, why risk it, right? So I was glad the coach said that, but obviously things can change. But I just kind of wanted to put things in perspective of typical Achilles recovery, right? So let's use this 11-week mark because that's where we're at. 11 weeks post surgery.
Mhm.
Typically, 2 weeks post surgery. So you're in a cast right after surgery. You're in a cast for
Right.
2 weeks. After 2 weeks, so 8 weeks ago, right? Whatever. So we'll work back like that. You help me with that. But
Yeah.
2 weeks post surgery, you're in a cast. So at 2 week mark, you remove the cast and you remove the stitches. Okay. But then you go in at that point, you go into a walking cast at 2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
And for the next 2 weeks, you're in a walking cast, and then you get the cast removed and you're put into a walking boot and wedges.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so
Yep.
you got this walking boot and wedges. So that's at 4 weeks. Okay. So now let's go back. So whatever, 7 weeks ago. Okay. He was 7 weeks ago. He was out of his boot or he was in a boot and wedges for walking. Okay. And then week 6 through 9 is when you're in your boot and you start playing around with removing those wedges or changing those wedges for week 6 through 9, still in a boot.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yep.
for the last 2 weeks, if he followed that timeline, then that's just for tissue repair. That's just to make sure the tissue repairs and the hardware holds and solidifies. Okay. So now for the last 2 weeks, if that's the timeline, because that's at 9 weeks, he's got 2 more weeks. These last 2 weeks, he's been out of everything, but he's been immobilized pretty much if they followed that timeline, right? So for the last 2 weeks,
Yeah.
they've had time to do more soft tissue because essentially they didn't want any movement for those first 6 weeks, right?
No, that's a very comprehensive explanation, and I'll put it in simpler terms because I'm not as smart as you. It's like in my head, he is 3 times as fast in recovery, or in other words, at 11 weeks, he's where somebody else would be at like 30, 35 weeks,
Right.
And dude, it's amazing. And I know he's doing all the things that you could probably possibly do, like hyperbaric chamber, PEMF, getting soft tissue work, all the
Chiropractic.
PT,
Yeah.
all of it, and
Yeah.
it shows what you can do if you do all the physical stuff. But just as important is the mental, where he put it out there, and
Yeah.
I had a patient just today say that he felt physically, he had a lot of tension. And I said to him, well, have things been stressful? He said, yeah. And he said, I've been talking about how stressful it is, And I said, well, your body hears your thoughts, definitely hears. I said, your body hears what you say, so if you speak it, your body hears it. And obviously you hear it too. And I went on further to say that it also hears your thoughts. And he said, oh no. But we were kind of joking about it. But the point was just that, like, his mindset, Aaron Rodgers' mindset from the get was, I'm going to get right as soon as possible. I'm going to get right by this time, not I'm going to get right as soon as possible. Even he had a date and an objective specifically stated. And you can't tell me that doesn't make a difference,
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. To that point, like he was very specific. I'm sure that he had the timeline of the first postseason game, right, or the
Right.
week prior, so he knew exactly what date and where he needed. So he probably worked back. I was watching. My dad told me yesterday that he watched a documentary on Otani. I don't know if you have seen this documentary. It's on all in Japanese, but it's a gridded out. So he took what he ultimately wanted to do was make MLB in the USA, right? And then around that, he didn't only want to be drafted to MLB, he wanted to be drafted by 8 teams. Okay, which nobody ever gets drafted by 8 teams. But he had boxes around the ultimate goal, 8. Okay, then coming off of each, he had other goals with 4 goals around that, with 4 goals around that, 4 goals around that, 8, and it was this unbelievable
Matrix.
matrix of goal planning as a freshman in high school. And so the power of the mind, but he
Amazing.
put it down and he used it and he kept going back to it to make sure he was on track. But to your point, he was very detailed about it. He wasn't just like, I hope to play in the major league someday, No,
Right.
by this time. And how am I going to get there? Not only do I want to be the best two-way player, right? I want to be able to hit and pitch. Nobody's ever done that. Okay. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That mindset
Well,
stuff.
it doesn't happen by accident, right?
Right.
It's not luck, especially not luck when you planned it and you had intention behind it. Then it's
Right.
definitely not luck. Then you're a bad dude,
Yeah.
who makes things come to fruition that you think of or that you speak on, and I respect people who do that.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Well, is there anything else, Dustin, that you saw this week that you want to bring up before we sign off?
No, I sent you that kind of funny clip. I don't know if you got to see it. It was kind of midday today, but basically sports medicine's worst nightmare or doc's worst nightmare. And it was that player down on the field and the medical doc's running in and he's examining. It's the guy's leg. He's like withering in pain on the ground. And then the
Uh,
doctor trips over the guy's leg and falls down himself in front of the whole.
oh no.
So it was kind of funny. So to end on a little light note, yeah, that it's something you never want to do. You never want cause more injury to them or yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't have one of those incidents, did you, where you tripped on headed out to the field or anything like that?
No, one of the first things I remember in emergency procedures that we learned in college was you never run to the scene, and it's so
Hmm.
true. You watch EMTs, your friend or family member could be having a heart attack and they pull up and they walk into the building, and
Yeah.
and you watch it on the fields too. They walk on, because you have to be calm during a crazy situation, and so it's one of those things. But that's to that point, you got to know your surroundings. You have to protect yourself first, if you want to help somebody else. So that's one of the things we learned. So if I have ever an emergency procedure and you guys are around and I'm not hustling, it's not that I don't care, it's that I'm trying to protect myself and you guys.
Dude, can I tell you a quick little story? I went to a concert, and stop me if I said this already, but I went to a concert a couple weeks ago with actually one of our future guests, and there was multiple people that ended up passing out, and the third time that this one particular person fell, she got up, she passed out, got up. The second time she passed out, I acted on it, but my buddy said to me, "Man, you just jumped over that." And in my head, I waited a long time. Like I was like, "What's security doing? Where's the exits? What are medics? Where can I get down to? Am I going to be able to bring her up?" I had like 15 thoughts before I jumped over that thing and inserted myself into the situation because I didn't want to make it worse. I wanted to make sure I could help.
Hmm.
I also wanted to make sure I didn't end up in a situation where I was going to get messed up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, all those thoughts occurred. And he said, "Bro, you thought about all that?" And I said, "Yes." And so it
Yes.
made me think about Dr. Green when he was always like, "Survey the scene."
Yep.
And it's like the easiest way to get a test question right in that course
Yeah.
because that's how everything started.
Yep.
But when you said it, it made me recognize, like, yeah, man, you got to pause just for a second.
Hmm.
It's like the light's green in an intersection. You might want to look left and right versus assuming everybody is clear.
Yeah. Good point.
And yeah, man, I mean, just it can save you. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. No. What about you? Anything? Any last minute comments?
You know, I'm just trying to stay in my lane between here and the end of the year. I have some things I have to check off. I've hit most of my goals for the year, which is nice. It seems like a harder year than most years, but I've, if I normally execute on 75% of my goals, it feels like I hit like 85% this year. I have a couple things I still got to do. But thinking forward, is kind of my thought is how do we improve this podcast? How do we improve our skill set with this? And then others, goals clinically speaking with patients, with our business, in our relationships. So just like you talked about Otani and those things don't happen by accident, I like to give thought to those things and just write a few things down at the end of the year or during my birthday, December 1st, and use that as a year marker. So I'm going to spend this week doing some of that and this weekend. And I would say I'd challenge you to do the same, at least for the stuff that we do together. And let's, compare notes and push each other to be a little bit better in this, but also in other things too,
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
we do anyways influence you in some
No,
positive way as well. So yeah, I just want to continue to do that. That's kind of my thought for the week.
sounds good. I'm on board. Team effort, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm glad that we made time today, man. Thank you, Dustin, and thank you, listeners. I appreciate you guys. I had somebody tell me that they don't listen very often, but they know somebody who loves sports, and they they shared our link. And I said that was love.
Yeah.
Like I was like, man, you
Pay
don't
it
have to listen
forward.
every time, but the fact that you thought of us and shared us, that was great. So that made me smile earlier in the week. I forgot to tell you that. So
That's good.
um, yeah. Well, we will catch up with you guys in a few days. We do this every week. This is the Second Opinion. We're a sports medicine podcast. We appreciate our listeners, appreciate you guys tuning in and giving us some feedback. Dustin, thanks for the time. Have a great week, my friend. Close
You
out
too.
strong. And then we'll talk later on this week before next Monday's Christmas. So we'll have to figure out when we're going to record, Sunday or Tuesday, or what the deal is.
All right. Yeah. We'll figure that out.
I got something for you too. So we'll
Uh-oh.
talk this week.
All right. Sounds good, buddy.
All right, bud. We'll talk soon, man. Have a good week.
You too, brother.